a symbol of courage to young people everywhere to fight for what's right.
Where is she?
Everywhere.
The Legend of Billie Jean, directed by Matthew Robbins, featuring Pat Benatar's hit song Invincible, rated PG-13.
Folks, welcome back. We are back with a brand new edition of your favorite show, Unfinished Business. I am your host, Jeff Galshaw, and with me, as always, is a technical support and co-host, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions.
Oh my God.
Oh, this movie. If you haven't guessed by that tagline alone, this week we are talking about The Legend of Billie Jean from 1985, starring not only Helen Slater, but Christian Slater. No relation. It also has Keith Gordon, Pierre Coyote, and the inimitable Richard Branford, who for years I thought was Powers Booth like that. Martha Gehman as Ophelia, Yeardley Smith as Putter, and Dean Stockwell. Why not? Barry Tubb as Hubie, and John M. Jackson as Ken, his father. Yo, trust me, we'll talk about the significance of these people. And Ken Valentine as Mini Mart Girl. And, this movie was directed by Matthew Robbins. And how to describe this?
He directed one of my favorite films of the 80s, Batteries Not Included.
Well, there you go.
That deep dive.
Yeah, that's the only other movie I've known him to direct. And in fact, I was surprised to find out he directed this movie because until I picked this as a deep dive, I never knew who wrote this movie. I just know I repeatedly watched this movie as a child, and it is a favorite. Okay, the basic story is Billie Jean and her brother get attacked by some boys who are trying to charm her, and they steal her brother's scooter. He goes to get it back. They damage it. She goes to the police. The police are like, well, boys will be boys. Bro, you were a pretty girl. And so then she decides to go directly to Hubie's father after Hubie and his boys beat the shit out of her little brother and wreck his scooter. And she just wants $608 for the body work. He says he'll pay. Takes her up to the top room and then basically sexually propositions and tries to rape her. Her brother's in the store going through the register, finds a gun. He says it's not loaded. In checking to see if the gun is loaded, he shoots the guy.
He pulls it out like Baldwin.
Yes, and they basically go on the run from that part. And then she basically becomes a celebrity, which her victim makes money off of by selling memorabilia or likenesses of her. And at the midpoint of this movie, she is inspired by watching St. Joan, not the original Passion of Joan Arc, but a remake in itself, and she copies, and then everybody starts shaving their head to emulate her. And then in the end, which we'll probably get into, but just as Joan of Arc was burned at the stake, likeness of effigy is burned of Billie Jean in the end, when everybody realizes they were pawns. What they thought of as a fad was really someone's life. Life and death stakes. And that seems to be the morals of the movie. But, again, I watched this endlessly as a child, over and over, that I even remember little things in the film that watching it again, I'm like, yep, it wasn't all in my head. It's still there. Like when she's running and then running to the garage and tilts her head, and that's when Bates closes, puts the trash can on it. But I have some bad news. And when it comes to this film, it is a film I'm always going to hold near and dear to my heart, but watching it again is not as magical as when I was a child. I guess my taste has matured a little. It's like Monster Squad. I respect it for what it was and what it means to people, but I can't sit here now and say, "Oh, this movie's amazing." And I mean, it's very for me nostalgic, and it'll always have a special meaning for me. But yeah, there are some things in this movie like what? um, Andre, tell me about your history with the legend of Billie Jean.
Oh man, it's interesting. I remember seeing it advertised for a TBS broadcast, and when I first saw the title, I thought it had something to do with the Michael Jackson song "Billie Jean." So I didn't know that they were like not related at all. But it's possible maybe the writers thought that was a cool name to use for a movie, so that's probably why they used it. I did think when I was younger that Helen Slater and Christian Slater were related.
So did I.
Apparently, he thought they were going to get married because they had the last name, for what I heard. So that was kind of like awkward. Yeah, like with you, it was a movie that was on all the time, and anytime that it was on, I was watching it because there was just something about, I guess, that '80s vibe, down to the music, the rhythm of the editing, and just how kind of fast and loose it goes, and it still sticks with me. Like I think about that whole scene in the mall and playing the Billy Idol song. Like anytime I hear that song now, I think of that film. And and of course the Pat Benatar theme song, which he considers the movie trash,
He considers it's
Yeah.
the first movie ever, and she introduces the song with saying that, actually.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's one of her classics, but she hates the film. I mean, that's common with a lot of '80s movies. And I do remember, like, I had never seen Yellow Smith outside of Lisa Simpson, so that was kind of like shock for me to see her as a real person and not, the voice. Yeah, and I didn't understand as a kid when like she had the period, and then when I got older, I was like, oh, that's pretty intense for, I guess, a teen film. If I go, so actually, it was supposed to originally be an R-rated picture, and then I guess on appeal they made it PG-13 because that's when the rating first came about. It was 84, 85. Peter Coyote I only knew from E.T. and never saw him how he looked until this film.
You didn't see Outrageous Fortune?
No, I remember it was advertised. I never saw the movie until I was a little older.
Oh my gosh. And
I never bought her attraction to Keith Gordon. Like, he's a shrimp.
damn. Well, there goes our Keith Gordon interview.
Come on the show, though.
I bought it. I just thought it like when they go to him, the movie kind of changes. Like, like first of all, I guess seeing it through modern eyes, there's no way I would have been scared in that house because everything looks plastic. It's a horror show. Though that was a nice mask. But, like you said, he's an asthmatic, and he just willingly goes along, but I'm, like, looking at Helen Slater, I go along willingly, too. I will admit, I had a huge... This was the height of my crush for Helen Slater, She
was coming off Supergirl.
A movie I actually still like. And, look, it ain't perfect, but I like it.
It kind of scared me as a kid when she went to the Phantom Zone.
No, the thing that scared me was whatever the thing Faye Dunaway was keeping that thing in, and it kept growing. It looked like a virus or a tumor.
Yeah, didn't she fall to a swamp and some monster came out?
Yeah, look, like I said, that's Supergirl. I didn't say it was good. I just said it's entertaining, but I like it. But with this movie, first of all, if I could give Oscars, Richard Bradford, ladies and gentlemen.
That guy is a chameleon, because when I tried to see him in other movies, I'm like, wait, he's this Irish cop in The Untouchables, he's the Russian guy in Little Nikita, and I thought, like, I could never find him whenever he was advertised for another movie. And it's a role that I think Burt Reynolds could have easily have played in his sleep.
I told you, I thought it was Paris Ghost. I like Richard Bradford. As Pyatt of all names.
Right.
I mean, this movie, well, it's set in Texas, so big shock, everybody's misogynistic and sexist in this movie, or all the males are. The fair is fair, right is right. I also noticed, like, in the beginning of the film, she's wearing some low-cut outfits.
Yeah.
Here's the thing that always bothered me. It was scintillating when I was a kid, when she's getting all ready and you see her naked back, and she's, hurry up, we late. But then it's to go get a milkshake and then just go away at the river? And she was, like, going to work, you know? So watching this movie now, like, so you were late to relax?
Yeah, did we ever find out what she did for her work? Because she was obviously out of school.
Well, that was the thing I was wondering. How old is Billie Jean in this movie? Other questions. Is she really friends with Putter and Ophelia, or are they just neighbors?
I feel like they were neighbors, because remember, she was watching her when she was getting beat up by her mom, and then she wanted to join as soon as all the shit started happening.
Yeah, so I'm just like, these dynamics are a little, boggle my mind. Oh, I wrote down a lot about this movie, though. The Putter slap was real when the mother slaps her. I saw this before I saw The Simpsons, so when I heard the voice of Lisa Simpson, I already knew what the actress looked like, because I was like, oh, that's the girl from Maximum Overdrive in the Legend of Billie Jean, who was 20 at the time, but still looked 14,
Down her boobs.
Yeah, no, they had to tape them down. Let's see, what else did I write?
First time I ever heard of a diaphragm.
Same here, and I had no idea what it was, and I knew what a period was. I didn't get the significance of it in that scene, but I think it was meant to be like, oh, she's still so young, when she gets her period and asks for a diaphragm. No offense to Dean Stockwell, did he owe somebody a favor?
He was doing a lot of paycheck gigs back then.
Yeah, because he's like in it for all of 10 minutes. And I mean, I believe him as Keith Gordon's father, though. I didn't get Peter. I understand he feels guilty, but I don't get how forceful he is. Like, Billie Jean told us where you are. He's like slamming his foot down to wake them up and grabbing them, and it's just like, why are you angry with them? Like, oh, Billie Jean turned to saying, so of course now we're gonna tell you where she is because we know, because this is the first time we know of her leaving us. It was like, okay, your logic isn't working here. And I hate to say it, but I thought Peter Cagliari was quite the handsome man in this movie. So I was shocked he never really went on to bigger and better after this movie.
Well, he auditioned for Indiana Jones, and then that's how he got E.T.
I could see him as Indiana Jones, but I'm like, really, like you said, the only other noteworthy movie I know of him in is Outrageous Fortune.
Slayground.
Outrageous Fortune.
Heartbreakers with our friend Nicky
Anderson. And that's hard to find.
Yeah, you can't find it anywhere.
I think that the thing that shocked me is that years later, I know he wrote an article about learning to, like, part of his acting training, being a full artist, like he did mime training. And I don't know why, but that blew my mind, especially because he's so tall. So I always thought he should have always played, like, older, like, guy seducing younger women in movies, That's
it's like he plays Robert Mueller in that movie, that HBO series, The Comey Rule.
No, jeez. I can see that. I'm happy to see he's still working.
He does like those Ken Burns Vietnam documentaries as a voiceover.
He's got a voice when he's not over extenuating his Texas accent.
That's where he got real good.
And to show how selfless she is, when they shoplift, she leaves IOUs. And
I always go back to that scene because, like, I'm always trying to spot all the toys they were selling. Like, you look at a KB toy store and you see the G.I. Joe figure.
I remember those walkie-talkies, though.
Yeah, I remember walkie-talkies.
Back in the good old days when you could buy a toy gun that looked like a gun.
Walk into Toys R Us, you could buy a rifle, you buy, a black Uzi water gun.
And I don't get it. He really seems to be a dick like his dad, but then even at the end, he kind of like, yeah, you're full of shit, Dad.
Yeah, that always weirded me out because, motherfucker, you started this shit. You're the one who beat up Christian Slater, stole his scooter, and then he constantly getting kicked in the nuts, and then you're happy when your dad gets kicked in the nuts?
And you're the one who made the sharpshooter shoot.
It could be done.
And it's interesting you say it was rated PG-13 because just by the language alone, this should have been rated R.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of F-bombs, and then even the homophobic slur towards the end, you know.
I can almost bet there was probably a sex scene with Helen Slater and Keith Gordon that they cut.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
I mean,
the miniature golf course.
no, right after they got separated. And then, okay, I like the underground network of teenagers hiding her, but it's like, what was that whole thing when she goes into the warehouse? Was that like a meet and greet? You know, like was she supposed to give a speech? What the hell was that?
That sort of thing makes me think about if this movie was remade today.
It would definitely be about
Instagram follower, like Instagram influencer.
Well, that's why it would be perfect either for a remake or for a rediscovery, because again, it shows the hollowness of fandom to a certain extent.
Yes.
Being on brand and not expecting to be. And now what are you supposed to do with that fame when you didn't even want the fame in the first place? All you wanted was, again, fair is fair, stay on brand. And then there's that ridiculous little side scene where he goes into the abused boy's house.
God has good to do that.
Yeah, it's like, I understand why it's here, but this is stupid. Like, the only reason he backs off is because of all the people standing outside. And I remember as a kid thinking it was strange that he had soda in the back. It's like, why is it not in the fridge? These are the little details I remember about this movie.
That ridiculous car chase afterwards when the guy was, I gotta get the reward, and he starts shooting at her. And then the thing that always weirded me out with that chase, the car flips over, it looks like they're dead.
Exactly. And now the girlfriend has to suffer for her dumbass boyfriend.
Yeah, I feel bad for the girlfriend.
It's like, Jesus. I mean, let's see. I'm trying to think of other. Okay, the ending. Spoilers. So after all of this, now they're gonna go live off the land in Vermont, but yet they can't be living off the land because she's still hitchhiking.
But it's like, that was another thing, too. I mean, I get the whole thing throughout the movie is Christian Slater stuff will go into Vermont. But after Richard Bradford exposed himself, you know, when they all find out what really happened in the store, that should have been it. She didn't have to be on the run anymore. I mean, okay, they stole some stuff, but that's like a misdemeanor offense. She'd be out in like a month.
But my other thing is, you're telling me Pierre Coyote just lets her go? You know? Because
he's worried about her. He cared about it. Like, because remember, they went to him when the scooter was destroyed. Like, yeah, do what I can. And then shit gets serious. Oh, he gets pointed out with a gun. I'm not sure if it's a real gun.
I understand the sympathetic cop, but if we're staying in the realm of realism, he can't just let a suspect go. I've watched enough for police procedurals to know that.
It's Texas. They still have the death penalty.
And not to mention, he's not the only cop there. So even if he doesn't arrest her, like his mustache partner never.
The Mexican guy.
Yeah, who has this weird scene of fake elbowing his partner for fun in the moment. I was just like, you couldn't think of any other thing to break up the monotony in this scene. It's just like I said, this is why it's so memorable, because it's like, it's a good story, but then it has these little weird little things in it that are like, what?
It's like, who are they really marketing this movie to? Because it seemed like at the time they were really capitalizing on the MTV craze. That's why like every scene feels like a giant music video montage with the Pat Benatar music and, you know, the rock music score. Like it's going to be constant rotation on MTV. So I'm guessing it was for a teen crowd, but I don't know. At times it feels like maybe it's made for a younger crowd, and then other times it feels like, is it really for adults? Because I don't know what this is supposed to be.
I think it's more made like for teens, especially if I was presenting it today. I'd probably more show it to 14 and 15-year-olds. Because again, I'm sure they've heard the F-bomb before. Yeah. There's no sex in it. There's no extreme violence. It's not as exploitive as it might seem like it's going to be. And I think one of the reasons, I was reading a few reviews of this, and one of the reasons I think that this isn't a cult item as much as some other, just let's say, okay or nostalgic 80s teen movies, is it has a female lead. And the film is basically about female empowerment. And I feel like that is one of the reasons, because it's not about like, oh, the hijinks of like high school or anything. It's about a young woman standing up for herself. And again, trying to get fair is fair. And I feel like a lot of teenage boys were like us, where they were like, ooh, Alice Slater sure is cute. But the message was like over their head and not identifiable to them.
It was also a very competitive summer in '85. You had Back to the Future, you had Flat, Rambo, Goonies.
But if you look at a lot of, let's say, subpar or mediocre, they didn't even have to come out in '85. A lot of those subpar and mediocre films have more fame than Legend of Billie Jean does.
Well, Just One of the Guys certainly has the cult status.
Well, of course, it has boobs, and it's more of a comedy. But, you know, this kind of asks its audience to take it maybe a little more seriously instead of just hijinks. You know, the most asinine it gets is really, I guess, the mud chase scene, you know, with the slowest cops on Earth. You know,
it's funny, too, like with Helen Slater, like this was her second film after Supergirl. And so it's like, I guess because of her stature and her look, they were putting her in like the powerful woman parts in films. And then after that, she started to play the girl to the guy, like Judge Reinhold's girlfriend in Ruthless People, then Michael J. Fox's girlfriend in Secret of My Success, even though their height difference is out of whack. And then she did a bunch of indie films before she started just doing mostly television. So it was kind of like, I don't think Hollywood really knew if she was supposed to be the tough girl or if they want her to be kind of the soft love interest. But I thought she was solid in the part. I think she's still proud of it because she did the DVD commentary with Yellow Smith.
Well, looks like that is something I'm going to have to buy. And, but also, I, even though I'm sure Billy Crystal didn't give a shit, I thought City Slickers, we could have actually, you know, get that in there. And wasted opportunity. I'm sure Daniel Stern has no idea what Legend of Billie Jean is. So,
I'm surprised he's not even in it.
Yeah, he's like, well, no, he hadn't gotten that Wonder Years money yet. So,
that's true.
You know, let's see, what other notes? Okay, I think one of its selling points is it's a road movie that never leaves Texas except for the end. And it's an on-the-run film. What I say, Putter. Walter Bernstein wrote the first draft of this screenplay. I can see why he probably did not put his name on it. And so, let's see. What?
Yeah, Lawrence Connor and Mark Rosenthal were credited, and they ended up writing Superman 4.
I'm sure they're probably more proud of this. Also, if anybody wants me to do more research on Pat Benatar, and she really said that at a concert, if you are willing to pay for my ticket and take me, I will gladly go. And because supposedly she's the reason that it took so long for it to get a DVD or Blu-ray release, because she did not want to originally sign off for the music to be used. But it's kind of impossible considering you're kind of the theme song of the movie. And I would also like to, I wonder why Pat Benatar hates this movie so much. I guess he's disliking it, but to actually go out and say, this is the worst movie ever made. You know, I'm like, that's not punk.
But she was also very much a feminist herself. You would think she would vibe with it.
Exactly. I'm like, that's why I don't get it. You know, I feel like if it was made today, they would have just gone to like some TV court show and settled this instead of going through all this, you know, because basically there's a movie about a refund and sexual harassment.
They're not going to travel all the way to New York for the People's Court with Judge Wepner.
Well, let's see. It's an anti-capitalist film too.
Oh, sure, yeah, because she has that opportunity to take the money from the guy. It's like, no, fuck this.
Yes, and she loses her innocence in her journey for all this, because before she's so selfless and happy-go-lucky, she still comes out the other end, pretty much the same character, but tougher, and learns about the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Would love to see a remake. It won't be as good as the original, but I think it could be an interesting remake in today's times.
And I do feel, because the movie doesn't have that cult status, and because it didn't work the first time, it's one of those movies that I agree. didn't work the first time, but you could redo it again and make it better?
I like you said, I thought it does have its themes and its messages, but like you said, it isn't quite said well through, I guess, the material. But again, it's 1985, so it's hard to get a pure feminist and directed by a man, because you're still having director directing through the male gaze, Like, I think with all these modern filmmakers who are making, more empowering films for movie, I think it would be great for one of them to handle it and remake it. Just considering I've seen Amy Poehler's directed movie, don't give it to her. That's my one request.
And don't give it to Elizabeth Banks.
This actually might be the one movie in her wheelhouse. I know Sarah Polley will never direct it.
No.
Or, hey, Greta Gerwig. I'm like, you can even play Billie Jean's mother.
No, I think Helen Slater would do the cameo, because, I mean, she's done Smallville, she's done the Supergirl TV show.
Hey, I would be glad to see Helen Slater in another movie. Another way in which Christian Slater should have known him and Helen Slater were not related. She's Jewish, and Christian Slater is not.
I only found out about that recently.
Same here, I'm like, though I will credit this for being, Christian Slater's first film and the catchphrase "far out," but this is a different Christian Slater than we see in Heathers. This was right before Gleam in the Cube Christian Slater.
This was Christian Slater, and then Name of the Rose came along. It's like, way different movie.
He was like, this one actually has boobs in this movie. And, I'm not stuck in a car with all girls, being the only male till Keith Gordon comes around. And in the car stealing scene, ridiculous.
And, another thing, too, that I think is a little ridiculous is when they're listening to the radio and there's an offer for the new scooter. That should have been the end of the movie right there. Like, fuck the old one. Get a better one.
No.
For your trouble.
Sentimental stake and then bet there too much. No, that old refurbished one felt to be the one. Not some brand new Kawasaki or Yamaha. Whatever brand that one was. Probably a Honda.
Yeah, fuck the Honda. Give me the BMW bike.
And, okay, you're living off the land, but you have a snowmobile scooter now at the end. What happened to the original scooter?
Right.
And what? So, they shot him. He got out of the hospital. No charges. Okay, you can go to Vermont.
Yeah, that's still left to be, resolved. Like, are they still on the run, or is it just now they're on vacation?
And I'm always fascinated by Martha Gayman, who played Ophelia, because the only thing I ever remember her in was the Flamingo Kid, the only other thing. And then finding out she's been acting all these years.
Well, after this, she was in FX. She was Brian Brown's friend with the truck.
So she's the one. She looked way different in that movie. She had blonde hair.
Yeah.
And I think I'm so used to that accent from her that, she could talk a different way. I would not recognize it was her. Because FX was on the other day, and they showed that scene in the truck, and I did not recognize her at all. So I'm just like, now that's a chameleon. And But I have to say, Helen Slater's really good in this movie, but this is Richard Bradford and Peter Coyote's movie.
Yeah.
Acting wise, because they are just, they are chewing the scenery so well. I'm sorry Powers Booth was not in this.
Yeah, he got fed in easily.
Somehow Michael Ironside is pissed he didn't get to play this role, because this was right up his alley.
I get what you're saying. I don't think it would have worked.
Why? Because he's Bond?
Because he doesn't have that southern charm about himself. He's a Canadian asshole.
If this was a straight-to-home video remake for The Hair, Richard Grieco could play Pine alone. So, his hair just gets higher, and Bell might be him in. Or who's another one who always has a pompadour? I think if we ever remake this, Esai Morales as that Pine.
Well, yeah, it needed some diversity in this case. So yeah, because there's no black people in this movie,
It's Texas.
and the one Latino guy is a cop with no lines.
I'm sure he mouthed something in the background before being guys, shut up. I would like to see Eastside Morales as Wyatt and Benjamin Bratt in the Peter Coyote role.
Oh,
And,
I
hey,
can see that easily.
hey, Benjamin Bratt suave.
No problem.
So, is there any five? Oh, we gotta talk about the soundtrack. Like you said, Billy Idol, Pat Benatar. Score's memorable, but I think that's more in a nostalgic way. But like I said, I recommend this movie. You know, for all its faults, it still has its charms. And
Yeah, it's a guilty pleasure. I don't hate it. It's just it's a time waster. Decent message, even if it's a little bit, all over the place. But overall, I think Helen Slater holds it together.
I agree. Like I said, if you can, it is available on Blu-ray and DVD. You get a audio commentary by the star and her co-star. I wouldn't mind Matthew Robbins if he was on the commentary.
I would love to, I can't find an interview with him about this movie. I'd love to hear where this story came from.
I think it would have been interesting to have Christian Slater in a separate commentary, since this was really his first starring role in a movie. Can you find the guy who played Human? So we could be on the commentary track.
Well, Barry Tubb retired, so
Barry Tubb, we'd love to interview you.
last time I think he did a thing for Top Gun for Reels Channel. That's the last time I saw him.
And I've seen John M. Jackson, who played Kenny's father, in other stuff. I just can't say specifically what I remember him in other than this. I like how he's so memorable. I had to mention him, even though it's like a bit role. It's like, but that John M. Jackson scene, y'all. So obviously, we both highly recommend checking out this movie. We think you will enjoy it. You'll find something to enjoy in this movie, even if it's just nostalgia. But that ends this edition of Unfinished Business. And remember, y'all, fair is fair.
Fair is fair.
Until next week.